Hi lovelies, welcome back to Create with Chidex. My name is Chidima and I've always loved African print fabrics. They're usually so beautiful, so colorful. So I said to myself, why not make something with that theme in mind? And so today I'm going to be showing you how I made a cake that looks like an African print handbag. So let's get started. To start the cake, I'm cutting out some rectangular strips of cake. I'm going to use the same cardboard template that I used to cut the cake to start the stacking process. So basically I'll apply some buttercream all over the surface of the cardboard. Then I'll start stacking the cakes. After stacking the 3 rectangular pieces of cake, I would also attach another smaller rectangular piece to the side just to make the cake slightly wider. Now that all the cakes have been put together, I'll cover the entire surface with buttercream. Then after covering the cake in buttercream, I'll place it in the freezer for the buttercream to set up. So that took roughly about 20 minutes. The buttercream has set up nicely, so I will trim the top part of the cake to round it off. I inserted a cocktail stick into the cake to help keep it stable while I carve it. After carving the cake, I cut 2 cocktail sticks to about the same height as the cake, then inserted them inside the cake to make it more stable. Now I'm going to cover the entire cake in buttercream again. I'm using my flexi smoother to smoothen it a bit more. The next thing I did was to cover the cake in blue fondant, so I'm starting off with the sides of the cake. To cover the sides, I cut out 2 rectangular strips of fondant about the same size as the side of the cake. Then I attached each one, trimming it down to size. Using my fingers and my fondant tool, I molded the fondant, pushing it in at the center and then pinching the edges to make them sharper. I also pushed the top parts together slightly to make it form a triangular shape. Next, I trimmed off the excess fondant from the sides before covering the other side of the cake, following the same process. When the 2 cake sides had been covered, I cleaned up the edges with a little buttercream. Next, I rolled out some blue fondant, trimmed it, and then used it to cover the cake. I carved my cakes really slim because I didn't want my handbag cake to be bulky. But because of this, the cake wasn't really stable, so I decided to lay it on its side instead of standing it upright. Now I'm going to trim off the excess fondant that I used to cover the cake. Then I'll use my fondant tool to slightly tuck in the edge of the fondant to hide the joints. I'm now going to cover this cake with edible wafer paper that I colored with my edible printer. I also conditioned this wafer paper to make it more flexible and easier to work with. If you want to find out how I did this, click on the link above and it will take you to a video where I showed the process. For the sides, I cut out pieces of wafer paper similar in shape to the sides of the cake, then folded it as shown here before attaching it to the cake using a mixture of water and a few drops of glycerin. Using a scissors, I trimmed off the excess wafer paper. I'll do the same to the other side of the cake.
I get those feelings
I roughly measured the width of the cake using a piece of printing paper, and using this paper as a template, I folded a large piece of edible wafer paper. After folding my edible wafer paper, I used my fondant stitching tool to leave the impression of stitches at the edges of the paper. Then I attached the edible wafer paper to the cake.
I don't wanna say anything, 'cause if I do, I might say the wrong.
Using a real handbag, I traced and cut out a template for the flap. Then using this template, I cut out the shape in edible wafer paper that I had already printed and treated as well. To get this print, I downloaded a background photo of an African Ankara fabric and then printed it on edible wafer paper with my edible printer. I folded in the edges of my template slightly and then used it to fold the edges of my edible wafer paper print. After folding the edges in, I glued it down with my water and glycerin mixture.
Don't know what to do anymore. I'm mad at options, nothing's working. I'm out of service.
I made another piece of the edible wafer paper flap.
I'm trying but can't scratch the surface. So I'll keep my mouth shut and not listen. Afraid I lose you if I didn't. Can we find what we're missing and compromise? So I'll keep my shoes on and not leaving. We're on thin ice, winter season. Can we find a single reason not to say goodbye? Oh, if I said what's on my...
When the two flaps were ready, I glued them together. Now I'm gonna glue the flap onto the cake. I'm gonna use my Magic Sculpting Liquid to make my bag strap, so I'm coloring it with gold dust. You can use fondant or even modeling chocolate for the straps, but if you want to use this sculpting liquid, I'll leave a link to the recipe in the description. I'm using a chain mold which I purchased from Amazon to mold the straps. After pouring in the liquid, I'll clean it up with my spatula that I dipped into hot water. I'll also clean it up further with a metal skewer. Then to make it more shiny, I'll paint on edible gold dust. After painting it on one side, I'll take out the edible chain from the mold. Then I'll trim it further with my X-Acto blade to remove rough edges. After cleaning up the edges, I'll coat the top part of the edible chain with gold dust. I made another strap, then joined the two straps together with my edible sculpting liquid to make a longer strap. I love this strap, it's so flexible and very pretty. Lastly, I lifted the flap of the bag cake and placed the edible strap at each end. And there you go, the African print bag cake is done. And as usual, I'm going to cut it up.
I'm gonna find my way tonight. Wait tonight. Won't you talk to me? I wanna hear.
Thank you so much guys for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to like it, share it, and also subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. And I will see you in my next video. Bye.